Hey, this is Brian, and in today's video, I'm going to show you step-by-step how to install the all-new KIES Carbon Executive Line strut brace for the G Series M3 and M4. We designed every element in this kit down to the nut with the exception of the stainless steel bolts, and I don't formulate Loctite. But if you're interested in learning about the 10-month process that it took us to develop this product, stay tuned after the installation and I'm going to walk you through the entire process. First part of the process, you are going to need a 13 and a 15 millimeter socket with a ratchet, and we are going to remove the factory brace. The bolt down here is a 13 millimeter. The 4 over here, you have these 2 over here and those 2, and then same on the other side, are 15. So at this time, remove the factory brace. Once you remove the nuts and bolt, just lift this straight up like that, and then remove the straight portion. Okay, for this next part, you are going to need a 13 and a 15. Now, to prevent any scratching on the aluminum, what I'm going to do is just wrap my tools here in a little piece of masking tape, just for extra protection. This part is not necessary, but just gonna take it up a notch. First piece we're going to be installing is the lower V section. What you wanna do is just take the OEM bolt and just gently thread it in by hand. Okay, we're gonna leave it just like that for a moment. Next, we're going to install the strut brace end pieces. You will notice that these do go on a specific way. There is a threaded section and a non-threaded section. The threaded section goes in the back. So what we're gonna do, we're going to install this one over here, like so. Should stay in place. So over here. Okay, this one's gonna go back here. Just gonna put a nut on so they don't fall off. Next, what you want to do is you want to gently snug these up. I like to gently press it back when I'm doing this, so just snug it up. Now we're going to start with the cross piece here. Now what's very interesting about our brace is one of these bolts is left-hand thread and one is right, so that what you can do to adjust your preload is just grab the bar. You can either loosen it or you can tighten it. So to make sure that everything's going to be super even, you want to make sure that you snug this side up here. Then you're going to do the same thing on the other side. Just make sure that that is nice and snug in its most compact form. Then what you can do is decide if you want to use the black bolts or if you want to use the silver bolts. I am personally going to be using the black bolts today. Okay, so then what we're going to do, we're going to span this across here. Start by just sliding this in to hold it in place. So as you can see, this part of the brace is a little bit too small. I can't even get a bolt in there, and that was intentional. That's what we did over at the table. So what you want to do is just twist this bar, and then it's going to line up perfectly. So once you have it lined up, what you do is just take your Loctite. Just gonna put one little drop on the end here, just like that. You're gonna feed it through, snug it up, and then we're gonna torque it down. And for quick and easy access, we've listed all of the torque specs for you down in the description. All right, so then I'm gonna take out this bolt. I'm gonna put one drop on. We're going to feed this through. And then what you wanna do is start to extend the pipe until you have a little pressure, and then we're going to start by torquing these 2 bolts on each side, and then we're going to torque this bolt, and then the same on the other side. Then you can grab an 8 millimeter Allen and do the same with the bolts. Now, when it comes to the preload, what we do is we just snug it up, and then we're gonna go back at the very end and we're going to tighten these nuts up just to make sure everything stays in place. What I recommend is just going and just making it so that it is snug. You don't have to go crazy on it. When you think about the stock brace, it just kind of plops in place, and then it heavily relies on how tight you have that nut. With ours, what the goal is to push it up against the bolt so that you're already starting as rigid as possible. And then when you tighten the nut down, it just gives you that added security. So same thing on these. We're gonna just make sure that we have it as small as it can be. Let's do the exact same thing. All right, so we're gonna slide this in here. And this one is going to be just our placeholder for now. And with this one, depending on what kind of intake you have on the car, you may need to remove these and pull it up against, kind of why we left it loose. This intake is a little bit in the way when it comes to actually torquing it down. So that's just something to keep in mind as we're doing this here. Okay, so line this up, push everything in place, and then you can adjust the alignment. Okay, so that's good. And I'm definitely going to hit the intake, which I do not want to do. So I'm just going to remove these. All right, so then I'm going to apply 1 drop of Loctite on here. Gonna give myself a little more space to get this thing threaded. Okay, and then before we actually tighten everything down, I want to make sure we do the other side as well to make sure that our V is nice and straight. All right, same thing. All right, on this one, I have barely enough space to get this in. Thread that into place. Then we can set up our Loctite on these two. Okay, and now that our V is nice and straight, we can torque this bolt down. Okay. Now, when you go to torque down this bolt, sometimes, depending on which intake you have on the car, whether you have stock or an aftermarket one, sometimes what you'll have to do is actually remove these nuts, put them up here, just lift this up like so, torque it, and then pop it back down. Now, if you have to do this, just try to get this as straight as possible. It's going to make it easier when you go to actually press it down. All right, then for the final part of the process, what you want to do, hand twist these nuts where you want them, and then you can carefully use the provided wrenches to just snug it up. You don't want to go crazy, just snug it up. Okay, and with that, the installation is complete. So as you just saw, this dramatically increases the underhood appearance of the G8X, whether you have an M3 or M4. Now what I want to do is I just want to walk you through some of the development process that we went through, some of the different iterations, and basically how and why we ended up with what we did. Now, when I first bought my G80 M3, the first thing I did was pop the hood, and I saw how ugly it looked under the hood, especially when you compare it to my Ferrari red F80 M3 with that beautiful looking piece of carbon fiber under the hood. The G80, it looked like an 8-year-old welded it together, so we knew we had to do something about it. The first thing we did is we had our engineering team pop the hood of my G80 M3, and we 3D scanned everything, and then many of you know we have a 3D printer over there, and we started modeling our first prototype. Now, our first prototype, again, it's a lot cheaper to make things out of plastic, especially when you're prototyping. And as you can see, we tried multiple times before we got it right. This was basically what the first piece looked like. and well, it has an end on it, but this is what we ended up with. So it definitely went through a lot of different changes. As you can see here, this was crazy beefy, and it was really heavy, it was really big, it was really bulky, and we knew that the general idea was what we wanted to do, but we needed to thin it out. So you can see the progression of even the rod end over here. We started with this giant piece here, and then we really felt like we needed one with a bearing. And then we realized that, well, it doesn't swivel and there's really no point to have a bearing. So we said, let's just develop it ourselves. So then we did that, and then we made it out of aluminum, and then we realized it was still too big. So then we had to skinny it down to make it just right and to make sure that it wasn't going to hit the hood or anything when we closed everything up. Then once we had all of that dialed in, we needed to develop a carbon fiber tube that was going to be structural. We didn't want it to just look good, we wanted it to be functional as well. So we developed these extremely high strength carbon fiber tubes to a very specific size. Let's take this one outside and I'll show you just how strong it really is. All right, so there's really no good way for us to show exactly how strong this is. The weakest point would be this way. It has incredible strength this way. So I'm gonna try to break it. There's not even any damage as we literally hit the tree as hard as my hands could take, even with some gloves on. And the cool thing is that even though it's incredibly strong this way, when you have the force sideways, which is the way that we intended it to be, it's even stronger. Over here, you can see the progression of the end pieces. We started very squared off, and it kind of looks like a whistle. And then as we went down, we refined it until we had the finished piece with the V part of the brace, we'll call it. Over here, when we originally designed it, it was very big and it was very chunky. Then we decided to kind of arc it out a little bit so you can see we went from here, then we made it in plastic, and then we went here, and then we thought, you know what, let's try to skinny it out a little bit, reduce some weight. So then we went to here. This is what it looks like straight out of the CNC machine. This is what it looks like after sandblasting, and then this is what it looks like after it is anodized black. Speaking of anodized aluminum, whether it's fuel fittings or our KIES brace, you always want to use another piece of anodized aluminum to make your adjustments. If you use a regular steel tool, what's going to happen is you are going to mar the aluminum, and then it's not gonna look as good as it did when you got it brand new. Now, to help you with that, we just designed a simple little set of wrenches. Now, the first set that we designed, we tried to make them as thin as possible, but we realized that, you know what, we messed up. We made it too thin, and what happened was when I was doing adjustments over the 10-month period, these were actually bending out. So as you can see, when I compare them to the final version, we really beefed those up to make sure that everything was as good as it could be. Now, when we set out to develop this, one of the main reasons that we did it is because, quite frankly, we didn't really like much of what was on the market. The BMW OEM one looked pretty terrible, and then I didn't really like 100% of the other ones that were on the market. And the big thing that I didn't like is none of them seemed to really have any point of adjustability. With ours, we made it so one of our rod ends was actually a reverse thread. So when you have this installed, all you do, as you saw in the installation video, is you twist it one way or you twist it the other. And what it's going to do is it's going to expand it or it's going to contract it so that you can dial in your preload to get the best performance possible. The other benefit is if you buy an accident car and maybe it's not 100% perfect, this is going to give you the wiggle room that you need to make sure it's going to fit great. Then to finish up the kit, we include the Loctite, and we include 2 different types of stainless steel bolts. These were very cost prohibitive to actually develop ourselves, so we just went with something that was already on the market and proven and true. We do have the chrome look, we'll say, and then also the black. Now, we include both because, quite frankly, when you have steel that's coated in black and you have aluminum that's coated in black, it's never really gonna match perfect. We did experiment with things like powder coating and whatnot, but what happens is a lot of times when you use something like a powder coat, it builds up in the middle, then your tool doesn't fit, and then it shows wear. And we felt that this was really the absolute best option that we could come up with. And if the black to black was gonna bug you, we gave you silver. So anyway, once again, my name is Brian, that's Zach behind the camera. Thanks for watching KIES Motorsports. If you are interested in one for your G8X, M3 or M4, be sure to see the links down in the description. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.